Hello everybody and welcome back to a brand new video. We just hit 42.3k subscribers. Let's get to 43k. Please like this video down below and subscribe to the channel before we get started. But first, I have to tell you guys about my friends over at My Patriot Supply. There's a famous old saying that goes, "May you live in interesting times," and we certainly are. Our world is so sharply divided right now, even our basic American right to free speech is under heavy attack. In fact, my channel here is in danger of being shadow banned because I am not quote-unquote politically correct. And if that happens, you suddenly won't be able to see my content anymore. Nobody will. It's a sneaky, underhanded form of censorship, all because certain people don't like what I say. But since I and my staff depend on revenue from the product partners we promote, a shadow ban would put us out of action, and I hope that never happens. But these days, anything could go wrong at any time. And that's why I teach self-reliance and emergency preparedness, especially when it comes to your food, water, and other survival needs. And as you know, I fully endorse the products from My Patriot Supply, and the advertising revenue I receive in return helps pay the bills, and it helps enable me to keep bringing you guys great content. But any day now, that might stop, so to prepare in advance, I'd like to make a special request. If you've been planning on buying My Patriot Supply, but you've been putting it off, now is the time to act while you can. If you've already purchased what you need, I thank you sincerely, but as you see, the future isn't looking much better than what we've just been through. Frankly, it's going to get a lot worse, especially leading up to the election, and that's why I urge you to take a moment right now and go to preparewithredeagle.com and make your purchase while you still can. My Patriot Supply is the only source I personally use and trust, and you can too. And right now you can save up to $100 on a 4-week emergency food kit of delicious, nutritious meals the whole family will love. My Patriot Supply makes it easy to be prepared at all times, and saving $100 off a life-saving 4-week supply is too good to pass up. The future is so uncertain, so I urge you to go to preparewithredeagle.com and get ready now. That's preparewithredeagle.com. And now we have to talk about the election results that came in last night, and we have to analyze them. We had primary results out of several states, including Arizona, Kansas, Michigan, Missouri, and Washington. So there is a lot of information to take in that we have to look into. And going to the state of Arizona, we saw plenty of primaries across the state. There were many primaries on the Democrat side, especially as many of the Democrat incumbents were being primaried, but it seems like almost every, if not every single one of them had pulled off their primary win. Same thing for some of the Republicans like Paul Gosar. I don't know why he exactly had a challenger, but Paul Gosar beat his challenger fairly easily in Arizona's 4th district, so that's good. Paul Gosar is probably one of my favorite congressmen, for those of you who don't know. So it's looking like in Arizona it was a fairly good day in terms of the Republicans down ballot. They did get more voters to turn out so far. If you look at the Secretary of State website, you can see this here. For the Senate election, even though I didn't like the result, the Republicans turned out roughly, it looks like around 630,000 votes. The Democrats turned out 560,000 votes. There are some ballots left to be counted. These are largely mail-in ballots. The Democrats had the mail-in advantage when it came to absentee voting. But it was not exactly that significant, so Democrats may be able to make that up in the gap, but they might not be able to. So it seems like Martha McSally did beat Daniel. McCarthy demand Daniel. He did end up losing, which is kind of a sad thing to happen. We know about McSally. We know McSally is largely an establishmentarian politician. Is she electable this November? I really don't know. We don't really know if Daniel McCarthy was that electable, but we do know that he was the better choice from any of the polling that we've seen. Mark Kelly does seem poised to win the Senate seat in the fall. He is a fairly strong candidate for the Arizona Senate, you know, a moderate so-called blue dog Democrat, or at least somebody that's running as a blue dog Democrat. Yeah, when he gets into office, he might completely do a entire 180 and vote for Trump's impeachment like Kyrsten Sinema did, but that's really up to the future to decide if that's going to be the case or not out of Arizona. Another key race out of Arizona was the Maricopa County Sheriff Republican primary. If you look at this here, you can see that Joe Arpaio, the controversial former sheriff running back for his old sheriff seat, is trailing by around 500 votes right now. A lot of people are speculating that Arpaio has already technically lost, as many of the ballots yet to come in are more typically establishment Republican. So if Arpaio is actually lost to Jerry Sheridan, that probably is a little bit of a relief for Republicans because Arpaio makes a lot of Democrats angry. I'm not so certain that Arpaio being on the ballot would completely ruin Trump's chances in Arizona or something like that, but it definitely wouldn't help. I think it would hurt a little bit. So the fact that Sheridan is going to be the potential sheriff is a good thing. So the fact that Sheridan won the nomination is what it's looking like is probably a good thing overall, even though I do agree with Joe Arpaio. He was the victim of a political lynching, in my opinion, and it's so sad to see what they've put the guy through. But at the same time, he probably would hurt the Republicans come election time in terms of a swing state like Arizona. So the fact that Sheridan is going to be on the ballot come November, more likely than not, is probably a good thing for Trump instead of a bad thing. So that's really it for Arizona. Again, the establishment candidates seem to have won, which is a bad thing. But at the same time, it's probably best that Arpaio loses in terms of Trump's chances for winning Arizona come November are a little bit higher now than they would have been if Arpaio ended up winning. But as for Martha McSally winning, I mean, that's kind of sad. It's more sad that you see these America First candidates not exactly put up the best fight, not exactly put up the, you know, they don't really have the money to win. They don't even get Trump's endorsement in many cases. And you saw a similar thing here happen in Kansas, and it's a similar situation when it comes to electability. Roger Marshall is more electable. He would win the Kansas Senate seat safe, pretty much guaranteed. He probably is going to win it by around 10 to 12 points. The Democrats are putting out a fairly moderate candidate in terms of the average Democrat in the country. But at the same time, Roger Marshall is probably going to beat her regardless. Kobach would have been in a little bit of trouble. I think that Kobach could have easily pulled it off, but at the same time, it's kind of sad to watch this primary go down the way it did as Marshall, the candidate who wants to bring in all these foreign workers. He's the guy that ends up winning the nomination in Kansas. Also, Republicans turned out a lot more voters than the Democrats, and it wasn't even close in terms of the primary in Kansas, so that is a good thing for the Republican Party. And if you look at this map here, Kobach did a little bit better in the eastern part of the state, but the rurals out in the west overwhelmingly favored Roger Marshall, and there were many counties where Kobach actually came in third place, which was a little bit of a surprising event there. Other races that happened in Kansas, we have more good news for Republicans, and that's Steve Watkins, the corrupt incumbent that's been charged with felonies. He is now ousted by Jake LaTurner, a new individual who will probably have a much better chance at defending the seat in the November election. So even though Watkins is saying that a lot of the charges are politically motivated, it's still probably a good thing that he is not going to be the nominee come November in terms of the chances of electability. Plus, Jake LaTurner is definitely less ingrained in the swamp from what I've heard than Steve Watkins. So it's looking like down ballot you see, you know, Republicans having a little bit of a mixed bag, or some of the establishment Republicans end up winning, some of the anti-establishment Republicans also have won. And you see this throughout the Michigan primary as well. There wasn't a whole lot out of the ordinary that happened in the Michigan primary. Michigan, Republicans did seem to get their candidates in certain districts. Paul Young, which is looks like Jung, but it's pronounced Young. He has defeated Mike Dempter. I prefer Dempter, but Young did end up winning in the 8th district. Personally, I think Slotkin has a lot better chance at holding her seat now. Going down the ballot, there was a very anti-establishment Republican that did win in the 9th district. He had many unorthodox views on his website, Langworthy, but I don't really think he holds much of a chance in the general. McClain did win in Michigan's 10th. I've heard bad things about Hernandez in terms of his past support against some of the things that Trump has talked about as in opposing the wall. McClain winning is probably a good thing for a safe red district to get a Republican that's actually pro-Trump, unlike never-Trumper or fair-weather Trumper Paul Mitchell, who does not care about the people of his district whatsoever. It looks like in the 11th district for the Republicans, Ishaki has won. I don't know a whole lot about this district. A lot of the candidates running are not necessarily full-on anti-establishment, but they're not necessarily all full-on establishment insiders either. So it's going to be interesting to see how it shakes out. Haley Stevens is a nut job, but again, the district is swinging to the left. So I probably would expect Stevens and Slotkin to sadly hold, but you never know. Obviously, I'm going to be voting for Young come November in the 8th district. In terms of Missouri, Cori Bush has beat Lacey Clay. This is an upset for the Democrats, the anti-establishment Democrat. You're seeing a lot more of these AOC type of Justice Dem candidates end up winning in some of these districts, and you see this happen here, which is very, very interesting. Also, the Medicaid expansion amendment in a deep red state, another deep red state has passed expanding Medicaid, which is surprising. A lot of the rural areas actually ended up voting against it, and there's definitely pros and cons to this from what people see on the ground, raising premiums for people that don't necessarily need it versus people that actually need it. The suburbs actually voted for the proposition more so than they tend to vote Democrat, which is a very interesting development. And you did see some support for it among what you would say traditionally Republican areas in the rural areas. And what it shows is that the Republican establishment, once again, proves itself to not align with the interests of their base. They don't really care about healthcare that much. They don't have a solution for it. And that's why you're seeing the Democrats gain, and even their policies are gaining, even among the Republican base in places like Missouri. So that's kind of what we see here all across the board when it comes to things like expanding Medicaid. Oklahoma, safe red state, did it. Now Missouri, another safe red state that also had passed the amendment. Nothing really surprising down ballot. We know Mike Parson and Galloway both won their respective nominations for governor. Also in the state of Washington, the runoff will be between Democrat Jay Inslee and Republican Lauren Culp. So Inslee got 52% of the primary vote, and he was really the only high-profile Democrat running. So will Lauren Culp be able to overperform what her expectations are? I mean, it's very, very possible. The Republican only lost by a likely margin in the 2016 Washington governor's race, so maybe she could make it closer than expected. Who really knows? But it's definitely going to be interesting to watch. Jay Inslee is kind of a figure that's been there. He's not entirely that popular for such of a deep blue state, but it's definitely the third-term itch. We'll see if he's able to pull it off come November, judging from the fact he got 51% of the vote in the primary. The odds are he probably will prevail. Also in Michigan, one last thing out of Michigan, John James and Gary Peters both won their nominations, even though they were both running unopposed, so that's for sure going to be the November race. But here's an interesting tidbit about data that I wanted to go over, because Democrats actually did outvote Republicans in Michigan. It wasn't by much. This is the expected total. Republicans are up now, but Wayne County has yet to come in on the Secretary of State's website. And Republicans did better in years past, like 2016 and 2012, but there was much fewer turnout. And Democrats are going to claim victory over this, but there's a big catch. Not only is turnout up, but the Republicans in 2012 did much better than they did in 2016, and Trump actually won the state, whereas you saw Mitt Romney end up losing Michigan by 9. And like I say, it's not necessarily a negative for Donald Trump, because the Republican Party is definitely becoming the party of the blue-collar worker, the worker that doesn't exactly have that much education. The old guard of the Michigan Republican Party used to be Oakland County. Now that's changing. It's Macomb County, and it's the rural areas. Those areas not necessarily that prone to vote in the primary. Macomb County turnout was fairly well for Republicans, but as you saw in places in the western part of the state, in places like Kent County, Ottawa County, wasn't exactly as high as it could have been or should have been. So hopefully the Republican Party can get its act together and try to win Michigan in November. Democrats are going to say Trump gave up on Michigan. That's not entirely true. He diverted ads away from Michigan for the home stretch, which in my opinion is a much better strategy. I definitely agree with a lot of what Bill Stepping's doing over the failures under Brad Parscale over the past few months of the Trump campaign. So from what I see, it seems like definitely a mixed bag of a night. A lot of information coming in, a lot of results, a lot of things going on for both parties, some upsets, some definitely expected results like we saw out of Kansas and Arizona. Also, kind of a testament to the polls, because we didn't see any polling in Kansas that had Marshall ahead, that was not a Marshall internal. But Marshall absolutely devoured Kobach, for better or worse. So again, polls are not necessarily that on point this cycle, and we're definitely going to have to wait and see what happens at the end of the day. But anyways, guys, thanks for watching this video. Please like this video down below, comment down below, and subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell for notifications so you never miss another video. Follow me on social media. Donate to the Patreon or subscribe. Star links in description. As always, guys, thanks for watching. Red Eagle, out.